working as a DevOps engineer for the past 4 years. So I was been with Infosys and with Signity. So my technical background are like I have knowledge on DevOps tools like Ansible and mostly with Terraform, Git, and Docker, Kubernetes. Yeah, and that's it. And I have knowledge on Python scripting along with Python programming language as well, and Java language.
Okay, all right. So, what is the difference between Terraform and Ansible?
So Ansible is like it's for the installations. Let's say Ansible, if you wanted to install a Python in 100 systems, so we do have commands like uh, install sudo app and yep, install. So all these commands, but we can't do that for to go and do for each and every system. So Ansible is used basically for so for such difficulties to clear that difficulty. So all we need to do is like write an playbook where we can mention all the host IP address over there, and then once we run that, then Ansible will be installed in sorry, Python will be installed in every system. Whereas Terraform is like it's as an infrastructure, we can write it as code. So that is what the difference between Ansible and Terraform. So it's totally a different functionality for Ansible and Terraform.
And whenever you are writing something or whenever you are going to set up a DevOps pipeline, so what are the Git command you are using day to daily basis?
Okay. So we use the VS Code for code editing options. So for an GitHub, we use firstly if you wanted to like add that changes to the stages. So we add git add dot. So whatever the changes we need, so that will be adding into the staging area. So if you wanted that to push into the main repository, so we need to definitely commit the code, whatever it is there. Commit makes the history. It shows who did the commit and what changes he did. You can compare that as well. So git commit minus m and the message, what commit have you done that day, or like that particular work or that particular scenario, what exactly work you have done. So we should mention that. And post that, we need to push the code, git push. And once the push is done, leads or senior managers will approve that. So they compare the code. If everything is good and they check in the local, and then they approve. Then that will go into the prod, and our code will be in the prod. And day to daily basis, the others also will be working on that. So it won't be any disturbance to anybody. The next day when you come, we can directly pull the code. So we will have the updated code in our local, so that our work won't be disturbed and everything goes fine. So this way the git flow goes for any changes that are made in the DevOps pipeline.
And
And we
how
can,
DevOps pipeline will trigger automatically?
yeah, we there is an option called a trigger in pipeline actually. We can customize that. So what it does is, if we wanted to run that in a main branch, then we can give that. And otherwise, if we give a star mark, that we can configure that. So anybody who made the commit changes done, which is if the commit changes are successful, then the pipeline will be automatically run. So generally, this process goes in a high level production basis, because when the after it's a successful deployment of application, if the application is running in the prod and everything is going good, so if you wanted any minor changes or anything, so we don't want to stop the pipeline or anything. So in such scenario, any commit made will be directly deployed. So if you want to configure in our local also, like if you don't want unnecessary running of the pipeline also, we can make that changes as well. We can make as many commits as possible, and then once everything is done, we can run the pipeline. So that is also can be done. So either way we can do.
Okay. So for example, instead of deploying in the prod environment, but we want to test whatever the changes has been made, so we want to test into feature branch.
Feature
So
branch,
then
okay.
feature to dev to UAT. So how will manage feature dev UAT?
So actually, the main branch, which is prod branch, dev branch, will be there, right? So we don't have any access to push into that dev branch before verifying. So that will be taken care of all leads. So in the feature branch and in the UAT branch, so firstly we do test in the feature branch only. So in the pipeline we configure that it should be run in the local. Uh, I mean, the local branch, they have trigger option, right? So there we don't give any main branch options there. So instead we give the branch name where it has to be run. So in that way, it won't affect any fraud code, or like it won't affect anything. So if something is missing out also, like we can close that and we can just create a new branch and just pull out that and we can make the changes. That is also a possible way. So we take a branch from the based on the main branch. We take all the code which is successful from the main branch and we make the changes in the feature branch. Once that is also successful in the local, then we push that into the main branch. So that is how it works for the branching
So
strategies that we follow.
if any conflict will happen, then how will resolve?
Yeah. So if any conflict has happened, let's say we had an code in main and we have created feature branch based on the main branch. We have all the code and we have made some configuration. So if some conflict had happened and if we tried deploying and that is not proper in the feature branch, then obviously we can the manager will compare the code of the previous version. Then he may he ask for the changes what required. He won't have approve the PRs and post that we can update the code and then we can push, or otherwise we can delete those changes and we can update that. That is also another possible way of clearing the conflicts which we get in during the develop build process.
What is Git rebase is working for? Any idea?
Okay, Git rebase. So Git rebase is in the sense like so once we had made some commits. We are in the central repository, GitHub central repository. We had made some changes, and the local repository we are making some other changes. So these, if you give git hyphen graph online, one line, so that gives us the graph, like this one graph will be in the statement and that will be taken into the another branch. So if you wanted to everything comes into the straight line, we give git rebase the branch name. So in such scenario, it creates a new commit with the branch merging with the main branch. So changes will be the same way. So the git rebase means like it's rebasing and into the main branch. So generally we don't encourage such things because we maintain only the severe protocols to have. We don't make any changes in central repository too often. We make local and we push. That is what we used to do. But in such scenarios, if any changes made in the central reports also, that is a possible way of clearing the conflicts.
For example, we are planning to create a deployment through commit ID and tag based. So how will do that?
If you wanted to do a deployment using a commit ID and
Tag, tag based,
task based, right?
tag, tag based.
So tag based. Oh,
Yeah.
okay, okay. Okay. So in such scenarios, we have a command in Git. You can give tags actually. So that
So which based your pipeline currently working?
Sorry, can you come again?
Currently, which type of pipeline auto trigger you have created?
Yeah, auto trigger we have created. Like once commit is done, then that will automatically create. We have done the other way also. Uh, Vinay.
So, is there any other way around? Have you tried with a
Other
commit
way,
ID with tag base?
okay, tag based. Um, Tag based we have done in the pipeline, but okay, I'm just recalling that. Tag based commits and deploying the deployment in pipeline, right?
Mm-hmm, yes.
So I used to do that in Jenkins actually. But in Azure DevOps pipeline, very recently I've been done tag based deployment. When I So I do
Okay.
remember, like, if there are particular commits, we are making any changes in the code for particular commits, and we can just make a tag to that. And if you wanted to run only the specified thing, then we can make that in the deploy in the pipeline too, mentioning the tags whatever we need. And also there is an option for the skip tags also. Like, say we have a bunch of code and we don't want any particular block of code not to be run, so in that scenarios, we give the tags there also, and once the we can mention that skip tag, and that particular block will be skipped with that tag, whatever it is there, and it runs the rest of the code. So
Okay.
either way, we can run the code with the tags, entire code, or we can just give the configuration, skipping the code block of code with the tags, and we can run the deployment as well. So we have
Okay.
that. Mm.
What is your target environment where you are deploying?
So target environment is like Azure Cloud, where we try to deploy
Okay, Azure Cloud.
infrastructure. Mm.
Okay,
Provide it as.
for
Mm.
example, you have three environment, dev, UAT or production.
Okay, okay.
So with
Mm.
respect to the environment, how we are integrating with your GitHub or Jenkins, how authentication and authorization method which you are using to interact with the Azure DevOps, Azure Cloud.
Okay. So what's the authentication way which we are using to? Okay. So we use in Azure DevOps. We use Azure DevOps. So in Azure DevOps, we have this in settings called service principal and service connections. So these have these key values and all the secrets mentioned line there, underlined there, and give access for the the who are the team people who are have access to use that. So in such way, we give the service principal back in the Azure RM service principal, service based ARM, and service connection as well. So we give that, we create one service principal and we give that in the pipeline. So the authentication happens when the pipeline runs. It checks the service principal of the cloud, Azure DevOps, and then the subscription ID as well. And that also displays there, which login we are doing, and then it processes the infrastructure. So that is how happens in Azure Cloud. So it authenticates in that way. We do that in that way.
Okay, so for example, we want to provision the infrastructure through Terraform.
Hmm.
So then, how the authentication will be enforced? What is the prerequisite to set up Terraform to provision the Azure cloud resource?
Through a pipeline, right?
Through pipeline, or maybe you can
Let me see
explain in
that.
either way.
Hmm. So, like what the question you have asked, we can do it two ways. Either from command line interface, and we have pipelines. So command line interface also, we have commands to. I mean, once the uh, code is done, we can try initializing and then running the infrastructure in the code. So through firstly, I will say through command line. So once the authentication, how it happens is when we when we write the code, everything is good, the TF files, everything is good and fine. Then we try to run the Terraform commands. Then it asks for authentication, like the user's access ID and the token which will be displayed there. So we need to just give the token ID there. So then only like it will go into the cloud and then that puts the deployment. The other way we generally everyone uses is from the pipeline. So from the through the pipeline we write the code in Azure DevOps itself. We have Git pipe Git and the pipelines everything and in a similar page only. In Azure DevOps pipeline in page we have all those things. So in there we have a GitHub repo and we give all the TF files folder there. And once that in pipeline we what we do is like in pipelines we give the service authentication and the service principal and the service connection details in the pipeline. So once that is done, then we give an installer, Terraform installer in the pipeline. So that installs Terraform. Otherwise, we can add there the plugin also. So in extensions, we have Terraform. Then we have John as another. That installer, we have the latest one. And Johnson John Works installer also there. So we add that installer. Otherwise, we can directly give the installer. From there, we can give the command as an Terraform init command, display name and the inputs and the command. We can give the Terraform init, validate and apply. So once Terraform it run, first it initializes and it checks the service principal. When every permissions and everything is fine and good, then it goes into the next step, init, plan, validate. It's init, validate, plan and apply. So in this way, it checks in the validate if the configuration is good. Even if may make any syntax errors or any variable missing, so that all can be found in the validate step. So we give their check is equal to once, even if it's not given also. Once the validate is done, only it will go into the next step. And yeah, if validation is fine, then we go into the plan. So in plan we have all the things like what will be created, what exactly will be created. So I have my code with this a particular type of resources. These all need to be deployed in the cloud. So those things will be displayed there. I mean, the resource group will be created, the subnet will be created, the vnet will be created. So in that way, everything will be shown in the plan. So once plan is successful, then it goes into the apply and we can on refreshing the cloud we can see the location where we have deployed the code and we can see the resources displayed in the cloud. So this is the exact process of how we are provisioning the code, Terraform code.
Okay, so token creation or token ID, before going to set up the Terraform prerequisite or all these things, token ID creation through manually, or how token creation process in your automation pipeline, how we are creating token. Can you tell me that token creation process?
Okay. So token creation process is which is there for GitHub also. So when we are in the local environment and if you want to connect with GitHub also, there in settings we have connection settings. There we have configurations where we have all the token ID or like signing from the mail or all these things. So once we choose the token ID, then the token ID will be displayed there. And in the Git, once we log in there, it will ask for any options for connecting to GitHub repository, and then we can give the token ID. So it's a prerequisite. We have to create it earlier before connecting with that. So for GitHub, we do that in that way. We give the token, then that is connected to GitHub. Once we push anything in the local, that will be into the central repository. Similarly, coming to this authentication via token process, right? So we do, I have done this pipeline building process through service principal and service connections. So creating with the token ID, yeah, it's pretty much the same process how we do for the GitHub as well. In the prerequisite, before itself, we have token IDs. which we have created earlier from the cloud, from the key vaults and all this security stuff. So once we do from the pipeline, we give the tenant IDs and all this thing, then that will process the authentication, and it flows the process, it moves into the further process. So yeah, that's it.
Okay, how will you upgrade the plugin on Terraform?
How will I update login on Terraform?
How will you upgrade plugin on Terraform? Suppose some plugin is required to upgrade.
Is it login? Is it what? I was saying.
My question, let me repeat. For example, you are using Terraform, right?
I'm using Terraform. Okay,
Then
Terraform. Like
sometimes after some years, 1 year, then they will ask you to upgrade some plugin.
yeah.
So how will upgrade the Terraform
Okay.
plugin?
Thanks for the question. I have understood. So we in Terraform code we give something called, either we can give in a separate file. So it's better for the future understanding. So as you have asked, after a year, if you want to check. So like at present, everything is upgrading each and every day. Everything is getting upgraded. So with the current Terraform version, we will have few resources will be running. With the older version, there will be chances that few resources may not run with the older version. So due to this reason, we have an option called provider.tf. In provider, we give all the Terraform versions and all these things. So backends and all these things in provider file. So we mentioned there the Terraform version. If we can keep this condition as well. So this has to be run if the Terraform version is under this version, or like when we are deploying that. So if this is under this version, or let's say if there are resource group and VNet, these two resources works only after 3.0 version. So we can mention there in the provider that if the Terraform version is greater than 3.0, then this should be run. Otherwise, we give an error that the version is not matchable, and this cannot be run. So in such way, we can give other update if this. Either we can give the version like 3.6.4 in that the latest version. Otherwise, we can also mention this code will be run if the version is greater than this. So in such way, it will be very useful even after the years. If your code want to run, or like if you want to make any changes, then that is also a possible way.
Okay, so what is state file locking?
State file locking, yeah. So a state file lock is that once our code is deployed, we maintain a state file, right, for all the information of the resources which is being stored in the state file. So state file is generally, and I'm telling you in my real project where I'm doing. So we create a storage account, we create a container. In that container, we store all this state file. So in that TF state file, what it will be is like all the resource information, it will be there. There will be having a locking option for the state file. So later on, if someone wants to deploy, change the code, and if you wanted to deploy, then that will not happen because the state file is locked. We need to leave the lock, and then only it will work. So we can give the permissions to the people who can lock and who can unlock. So this will be a high-end security secured process for our configuration will be in a secured way. So take state file. Once the state file is locked, even if we are writing any deployment cannot be done because that state file need to be updated each and every deploy any pipeline deployment, or like from the changing in the infrastructure. So
And
once
how to store sensitive data in Terraform?
Okay. So to store the sensitive data in the Terraform, we can use. There are two ways actually to do it. So we're parameterizing the code. Let's say we have a code Terraform code. We can just, instead of hard coding that directly, name is equal to some resource name. It's not like that. We can just parameterize the code like variable file, and variable file also we can make it, and the tf-vars file will be having the actual values. So let's say resource name is there, name, and I'll write like var dot resource name. In the variable file, I'll write variable resource name and type is equal to string and description, and the default value I will be giving. In the tf.tfvars terraform.tfvars file, I'll give that a resource name is equal to the actual value what I want to. So once we run this, it will go into the variable file. It will check the default value, and if there is no tfvars file, it will deploy with the default value. But it will go into the tfvars file, and then what happens? It will take that value. So instead of taking those values, so it will be sensitive. It cannot be stored with. It cannot be shared with every people. So we can share the tfvars to only the team members who need it. So that is one way. The other way is using environmental variable. So we can mention the environmental variables that exactly the sensitive data we can store it there. So before we applying that, we can export TF var and that value we can update there. So in that way, the sensitive data will be very secure and it cannot be exposed as well. So entire TFRs as well in this way also it will not be exposed. Yeah, in that way we configure the sensitive values, sensitive data, the passwords, and all these things.
Okay. So, is it possible to design application that handle connection failure in Azure?
Can you repeat the question once again?
So, is it possible to design application that handle connection failure in Azure?
Okay. Is it possible to design a code that connection fail in an deployment? Okay. So connection fails. I mean the connections in the sense like the we need subnet connections. I mean if for example if subnet fails that way, right?
Application, any application connection. Suppose you have deployed one application, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that application you are not able to connect, or you are not able to fetch that application. So that means fail.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
that's the question. Like if you can understand, or maybe we'll move on to next question. Like, what is the difference between declarative versus imperative?
Okay. Declarative and imperative code.
So Terraform is a declarative or imperative?
Terraform is declarative one. Terraform is a
Okay.
because it has an interpolation and everything, so it's pretty much a declarative. It shows all the errors and all the situations where what are exactly happening and everything. It uses HashiCorp language for the code, so which is like a JSON type language, JSON like similar text one. So Terraform is a declarative.
What is the difference between JSON and YML?
JSON file and a YAML file. Okay.
Yeah.
So JSON, in JSON file we have the syntax with each variable and values, whereas YAML it's directly declared. Let's say for example, in JSON file we can give all the JavaScript notation. It is a JavaScript object notation. We call it as JSON file. So it can understand the Java templates as well. So for instance, we have JSON file and we have all the things mentioned. And if you want to get the data, we can just load the file in Python and just keep the names. Data is equal to region, the resource group name. In such way, it's very easy to fetch the values. Whereas YAML file is also the same kind of notation, but where we cannot have the Java authentication, like the Java understandable features in it. So yeah, that's why we use this HashiCorp language for this Terraform code to run actually. So which is similar to the Java. It's very easily understandable file where everyone uses. For where DevOps understands, even DevOps team people also understand this HashiCorp language, which is JSON type.
Okay, all right. So, my last question to you, as part of your whole DevOps career,
Hmm.
so what are the challenges you had faced? Then, how did you resolve that? So, can you tell me a couple of important one which you have
Challenges.
resolved? Yeah.
Okay, I will say the recent one, what I have faced in my current.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so recently I am working for two projects in Signity. So where there is one scenario where we need to create a subnet for we need to create 20 subnets actually. So in such scenario, what the code actually is like, I was being asked to update that. So in that, what is there is like the code was written the 20 times. This is the subnet, and that there are like few subnets were having delegations, like delegation block. I think in subnet we have delegation block. Right? So there are no blocks for few. So in such scenario, they have created the 20 or something times all the subnet. So what I have asked to minimize the code. So it's very pretty long and it's looking bad as well. So what I did is I have used this count parameter, and I have used this count parameter. I have made the list of all the address prefixes and the subnet names. So I've used count parameters 20, and I've given count.index for every subnet name and address prefix also. So in that way, in 6 lines of code, I've got all these subnets, 22 subnets got created. The next challenge what I have faced is there are delegation blocks for a few subnets, and there are no blocks for few other subnets. So what I have done is I have used the dynamic block. So dynamic block, what I have said is like, if the subnet name is this, and I've made a list. If these subnet names are there, then that should have a delegation block. I have written a dynamic block and the contents where it should have these values and these values. So in that way, it got created with the 6 lines of code, 7 lines of code. I've got all the 22 subnets with the delegation blocks, and I've got with the subnets which is having delegations, and it also got with the subnets which is not having any delegations. So this is the latest challenge what I have faced, and it was very successful. And yeah,
Yeah,
this
great.
is
Great. That is also, because 20 times it is very, this is not the best practice. So that's
yeah.
good thing.
Even if it's like 2 or 3, then we can do it. But 20 times rewriting the code, that is
Yeah, rewriting code is not acceptable
not
because
acceptable.
modularized, everything
Hmm.
should be modularized. If
Yes,
required,
yes.
you can call the module.
Yeah, yeah. Module also we can. That is good,
Uh,
good answer. We
uh,
can do its module. We can call the module also. Create
hmm,
one subnet and we can call that module, and that is also a simple one. Just
simple
give the
one.
module and
Correct.
south, and just give the path of the module what we are using, and that will also create.
Create. Yeah,
That
correct.
is one idea. And count
So
parameters to set.
exactly, exactly. That is the best practice nowadays. Every business
Yeah.
they are